Immense thanks once again for your company as we blaze the trail on tonight's edition of the news in English on Canal International. Of course, brought to you live as always from our studios in central Douala. Right ahead, our lead stories.
Journalists on the spotlight as the world is bitter on impunity of crime perpetrated against journalists. And as they practice in fear, it is time to bring to book all those who abuse journalists in the line of their duty. As anniversary celebration of President Bia's 40th year in power draws closer, political analysts revisit the gloomy moment when President Ahmadou Ahidjo resigned in 1982. And security operatives dismantled a drug cartel in the north region of Cameroon, confiscate huge consignment of narcotics products. The 6:15 news is just ahead in a split second with Anchorman Ntharike Divine Ramsey Jr.
Now let's start out from where he left off, because drugs trafficking has attained unprecedented levels across Cameroon. And as birds, in this case, the traffickers learn to fly without perching. So do the hunters aim to shoot without missing. And the hunters, in this case, the police in Garoua in the north of Cameroon, have laid hands on several cannabis traffickers. Ambo Gladys.
This large quantity of narcotics, estimated at 1 ton, was seized during an operation carried out by the police in Garoua in the north region of Cameroon. The first operation took place at the Camp Chinois neighborhood. There, the police laid hands on 2 narcotic dealers and equally seized their goods, which included hard drugs, Indian hemp, bladed weapons, and some military property. Investigations are over, and it is certain the alleged criminals will appear before the State Council. The operation will take place all over the region, but we decided to begin with the town of Garoua before extending to other divisions. During the second operation in the line neighborhood, a suspect was arrested after a house alleged to be a narcotic storage was uncovered. The suspected drug dealers were presented to the press. We are calling on the population to collaborate and feed us with the necessary information so that we can do the rest of the job. We work 24/24 to protect the population. The operation, carried out by forces of law and order in Garoua, is aimed at fighting against the trafficking and consumption of drugs and narcotics in the north region.
Now let's come down to the capital, Yaoundé, where administrative authorities are enforcing a project aimed at curbing the haphazard parking of vehicles. Earlier today, 10 clandestine transport vehicles were grounded and impounded for refusing to station at the Olembe Park. Here is Beatrice Ngamo.
The early and surprise action by the divisional officer of Yaoundé 1 this Wednesday was to get the victims red-handed. It started here not far off from the Yaoundé Central Market, precisely at SHO. A minibus being carted away, the passengers were simply told to leave the vehicle. The operation to send transporters to the Olembe Motor Park continue at the Batalonkak area, where it is very common to see passengers waiting for cars to travel to Obala. There also, other cars fell. The divisional officer of Yaoundé 1, Aruna Nyamding, and team comprising the mayor, forces of law and order, alongside council police, also made a stop at the popular Mobile Emana hotspot. The transporters, like drivers, did not hold back their anger and confusion. At every stop, the divisional officer not only explain, but educate the transporters like travelers.
À la fourrière, Nous avons déjà une dizaine de véhicules.
Warning that as accomplices ally in crime, their next operation will see both vehicles like passengers impounded. We have come to an agreement with the divisional officer that order should reign by all means, and we need to all agree to go to Olimbe. The reason advanced by the civil administrator of Yaoundé 1 is to ensure his area of command is orderly and safe.
J'invite une fois de plus ces transporteurs à rejoindre le site provisoire d'Olimbe. Il est question de prévenir les embouteillages que nous enregistrons en fin d'année. Nos équipes sont sur le terrain et vont opérer jusqu'en janvier.
The repressive phase on to make sure transporters plying the Yaoundé-Obala stretch of road settle in the temporal motor park at the west entrance into Yaoundé, Olimbe, and the contribution of each and every one important for the safety of all.
Now, today, November 2, is commemorated internationally as the day to end crimes against journalists and, of course, the impunity that comes with it. And as the United Nations intensifies calls for a free press and the respect of the rights of journalists, media practitioners in Cameroon say they are still victimized by some ill-intentioned people in their very own society. Hyacinth Chia.
According to the Secretary General of the United Nations Organization, Antonio Guterres, 70 journalists have been killed in the line of their duties this year 2022, and most of these crimes go unresolved. The situation quite applicable in Cameroon with some deplorable cases.
Because of the work we do, we often get entangled with members of the society and the people who do not desire that we uncover certain stories because the stories are against their interest. The same people who are close to you to intimidate you, asking you your life or you drop the story.
On this November 2nd, International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists, media practitioners and leaders of journalism associations urge the powers that be to clear public doubts on cases like Samuel Wazizi and others.
They might have a case against Wazizi, but that case is not subject of him disappearing the way he disappeared, because even the most hardened criminal has the right to fair trial, and we still maintain that call.
The day is also to reawaken the professional consciousness of the media men and women not going astray to invite such crimes upon them.
But it's also an opportunity for me to also call on journalists who also use information to blackmail authorities in order to extort money or to gain favors. And we at the Cameroon Association of English-Speaking Journalists, we insist that it should be issues related to work, related to our daily duty as journalists.
A free press remains a vital element in the advancement of democracy and the sustainable development goals.
And so you heard Chia Hyacinth clearly enough. Some 70 journalists have been killed across the world this year alone. And while those figures may not bear direct connotations with Cameroon, journalists practicing in the country say they work under atmospheres of fear and intimidation and are calling on the authorities that be to ensure that the necessary steps are taken to ensure their protection. Here's Ndi Morin.
Reports have shown that in 9 out of 10 cases, the perpetrators of violence against journalists go unpunished. This impunity leads to further killings, and sometimes rights organizations say the situation results to the breakdown of the rule of law.
One of it is the harassment by police officers or harassment by gendarmes, especially at times when they go for coverages or they go for coverage. We realize that they don't have maybe access to information, but then even maybe going closer to these persons, it becomes somehow difficult for them to exercise, or maybe why not to spread their tentacles and get what they want. Those are the main thing that journalists in Cameroon and in Africa, and especially those in Douala where I belong to, they do face. I'm talking out of experience.
In crisis or armed conflict situations, especially in the 2 English-speaking regions of Cameroon, journalists are targeted, tortured, forced disappearance, arbitrarily arrested and detained, intimidated, harassed. These are among the main risks they face daily. The prevailing impunity, which fuels further threats and attacks on journalists, remain the most serious concern. Normally, a journalist would have more privilege than any normal Cameroonian by virtue of the fact that he is a journalist. But it is different as far as our justice system is concerned. All what we rely on now is a strong syndicate, but we fight for the rights of journalists and protect them daily. Aware that the urgency of the situation needs to be matched by an urgent engagement at the political level by governments, journalists maintain every actor in society, especially law enforcement, judiciary and other public officials responsible for fulfilling state obligations must be trained on the watchdog role of journalists.
Now let's open the page on our ongoing analysis of President Paul Biya's 40 years in office with a spotlight tonight on the economy. And Abo Gladys says he assumed office in 1982 amidst economic turbulence, but then engaged a number of projects which were expected not only to spur growth, but also to achieve emergence for Cameroon. So at this point in time, where do we stand, Gladys?
President Paul Biya's New Deal policy at inception did not only seek to fight corruption, but also encourage private sector initiatives in the development process that was in line with the world order deprived the state as the sole actor economic development. The privatization of state-owned institutions brought in private investments with assistance from donors such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The world financial crisis that set in was soon to hamper any gains made.
From 1982 to 2006, we can say the time was very, very difficult. Salary were cut down by about 70%, what favorized corruption.
Paul Biya's Greater Ambitions program, major achievements, and now Vision 2035 posture underline the New Deal's multi-sectoral projects geared towards attaining emergence by the year 2035. Apart from the Kribi Deep Sea Port and the Tema Station, as well as transit corridors, hydroelectricity remains a real concern.
You will find out the Lompanga projects, the Mvele project, they are all still in process. They have never been completed. How will I explain the fact that we have gas shortages, any light shortages in Cameroon? People are still suspended from light and so on.
Without them, we can never boost our industrialization process.
The Growth Employment Strategy paper and the National Development Strategy SND30 provides a major boost to the economy. Mining, finance, insurance, telecommunications are pulling more youths into an increasingly digitalized world. Enriching sectors such as agriculture are now considered crucial to the economy to foster the import substitution policy.
The agro-pastoral shows brought in some positive things that some Cameroonians are leaving them, but it cannot impact macroeconomic development because there are still aspects like rice. Like we import rice. When we have UNDVP, we have rice in the north and so on.
The country wants to reduce the amount of importation and to produce what it can consume itself. Even though the rate of growth remains not so high, what is important is to transform your infrastructural patrimony.
Despite such heavy investments, the Boko Haram insurgency, the crisis in the two English-speaking regions, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the recurrent inflations are negatively impacting on the reforms program and consequently affecting the quality of life of the population.
Let's stay on the same beat, and our guest tonight is Ernest Akufo, who was a fervent listener of the then Radio Cameroon when former President Amadou Ahidjo announced his resignation as president on November 4, 1982. He tells Chair Hyacinth up next 4 minutes of beautiful conversation that the news at the time took Cameroon by storm. Let's listen to them.
Ernest Akufo, thanks for accepting to be our guest to discuss this important, memorable day in the life of Cameroon. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Hyson. It's a pleasure.
Yes. Where were you on that fateful day when the news broke out that the old former president Ahmadu Ahidjo was resigning from power?
I quite remember that fateful evening because I'm a keen listener to the news. I waited for the 8 p.m. news. It was not forthcoming. That should have been the 4th of November, 1982. By then I was a student, a Form 1 student in secondary school. And on that day, I waited at about 8 p.m. to get the news. I never got it. So there was music playing until the news had to break.
And when the news broke out that Ahmadu Ahidjo was resigning and giving power to Paul Biya, how did you perceive that information on that day?
The voice, that voice of the father of the nation, President Ahmadu Ahidjo, when it resounded, when the music came to a stop, it seems as if the world had come to a stop. There was total quiet and tranquility. It was unbelievable, yet true.
I can imagine.
There was some sort of mixed feeling. Can this be true?
Yeah.
It was true because it was related by the person himself.
Even at that, some people
Cameroonians, my fellow compatriots, I am announcing my resignation as President of the Republic of Cameroon, and this will take effect as from the 6th of November. And my constitutional successor shall be Paul Biya.
Yeah, Ernest, tell us, before that day, was there any sort of speculation that such a thing could happen?
Speculations, no. To be honest with you. So it felt like a bombshell.
Like a storm.
Yeah, yeah. It was a bombshell indeed, because when it came, as I said, there was mixed feeling.
Yeah.
People, are we rejoicing? Are we contemplating? Where do we find ourselves? What does the future looks like?
Definitely.
Those were the thousands of questions Cameroonians were posing to themselves.
And Ernest Akufo, very little is said about the 5th of November 1982, the day that Cameroon lived, or Cameroonians lived without a president. How was it like?
People were a little scary.
Yeah.
People were a little cautious, even going about the streets or talking, because those who never got rid of the news.
Fear of the unknown.
There was a fear of the unknown, as you rightly put it.
And definitely came the memorable 6th of November 1982. What was the effervescence like? Paul Biya ascending the helm of the nation.
As you rightly say, the memorable day. You know, there was a lot of curiosity, electricity in the air, until everything had to take place at the National Assembly, where President Biya took the oath of office. I do so swear. So it took time for some people to get a grasp of what really happened on the 6th of November at the Glass Palace at Ngwaikele. But behold, it came to pass.
So thanks so much for honoring our invitation. We shall always count on resource persons like you to edify Cameroonians on what exactly transpired on that fateful day. Thanks again once for coming.
Thank you.
More politics lined up just after me with Janice Kamga, and our guest debating the feasibility of an opposition coalition for Cameroon. That will be in the debrief in the next couple of minutes. At 1950, Alain Ghislain Kanga comes up with more news in French. Catch you tomorrow and stay safe in the process.